Rev up your engines!
Now here's the last transportation device you ever need to buy. It's called Sarco, the Tesla of euthanasia devices. Now, it's legal in some countries for euthanasia, but here's the kicker. Even in Switzerland, where it's allowed if you're really sick and you want, but it can't be assisted by anyone because they said, hey, there's people going to be murdering people that way. So you got to be able to do it yourself. So these guys came up with this pod design called Sarco, which is a 3D printed capsule. And it's the last trip you'll ever take, right? If you're really sick and you think it's time to go, you climb into this thing, you push a button, and it gradually, in 10 minutes, floods the capsule with nitrogen. Now, of course, nitrogen doesn't have oxygen in it, so you will just fall asleep, they say, because you don't have any oxygen to keep going, and you just fall asleep, and it's all over. Well, not that bad of an idea. I mean, people should have the right of doing whatever they want. Now, I do understand. What if you don't want to kill yourself, but somebody else does? They want to inherit your money, okay? I can understand why you can't say, okay, we got rid of him. He wanted to die. No, you got to climb in a capsule, or if somebody places you in a capsule, you got to push the button that turns the machine on. It's got a console just like a car, right? And you push the button, and that's the last trip that you ever take. I think it's an interesting idea myself. People should have the right, if they're really sick or there's really something wrong with them. I think it's a good idea. And this keeps people from doing it to you, because the only person that can push the button inside once it's closed is you. Pretty good idea. The last vehicle you'll ever need. Well, I was reading an article. Are cars from a couple years ago really more desirable than the latest new cars? Well, I'd take it a lot further than that. I'd say from the last couple decades ago. They are making cars cheaper as time goes on. There's no arguing that. More plastic crap, more computer electronic garbage that breaks down, costs you a fortune to fix, or they don't even know how to fix them, right? The article itself was saying how, well, used is better than new anyways because you're saving money. New ones are having a lot of problems. Well, I agree with the first part. I never bought a new car in my life. You can't beat buying a good used car because you can save so much. I could buy a Toyota for, say, 1/3 of the original price. It might still have well over 2/3 of its life left. So you can't beat that, right? You pay $50,000 for a new car, and let's say it lasts 10 years. Well, if it's a Toyota, you could pay $20,000 or $15,000 for a used one, and it still might last 10 years or more. Do the math. You're really coming out buying a good used car. And one of the big ones, even if you're not a cheapskate like me, and you're not going to buy a 10 or 20-year-old car, you're going to buy one that's a few years old. Here is the best deal that you can get. And that's, if you like loaded cars with all the extras, go to the dealer and you'll see, well, your car's supposed to be $40,000. Well, this is $59,000 because it's loaded with everything, right? But when they're used, doesn't matter if they're loaded or not, they got lower price. So you could get a nice loaded used car for probably $30,000, $40,000 less than that same one new. I've had many customers do that. I'll say, how come you're buying a used pickup? Well, it's only got 45,000 miles, and hey, it cost me $20,000, and a new loaded pickup is $80,000. I don't blame them. It's a very smart move to make. You just need a mechanic like me, a good mechanic, to check it out to make sure it wasn't wrecked, flooded, or stolen. You can't trust anybody, but once a good mechanic checks out, we can tell you it's been wrecked, flooded, stolen. Our computers, it's the one advantage of computer systems in cars these days. They're complex and they run everything. But a guy like me with a good computer scanner, plug it in, we can see if there's anything wrong with the car. It can't be hidden. So there's a lot less guesswork in buying a used car than it used to be. It used to be maybe an old redneck mechanic could check it out. Yeah, golly, it looks good. I don't see any dinks out of wheels. The tires are good. Yeah. No, we plug in a computer and it does a bunch of analytics. So buying a used car is a lot less of a gamble than it used to be. Get this, a guy bought a Ford at a Ford dealer. A month later, he said, give it back. Now this guy, Adam Saloti, he bought a brand new Bronco and he traded in his Volkswagen Jetta for it. Smart move. Get rid of that pile of crap Jetta, right? He signed contracts and bought the SUV in December. But then, a day later, the dealership, we want it back. The guy says, they wanted me to bring it in by 3 p.m. on Christmas Eve. They said they sold him a vehicle that was not meant for sale. Well, Too bad. They sold it to him, right? I mean, let's face the fact. He signed the paper. They had the VIN number and everything correct. So they sold him the vehicle. And they said, well, that's a special vehicle. Well, I say, too bad, right? Now, this was a dual-tone white SUV with a black top and had a bunch of upgrades on it. They saw the vehicle, right? They sold it to him. Now, Ford Motor Company said initially this was supposed to spend 4 months at the dealership so people could look at it. After the guy complaining, finally, Ford Motor Company said they released the dealership from the contract that told the dealer they couldn't sell it for 4 months and let him keep his car. Well, thank goodness it has a good ending, right? The guy gets to keep the car that he paid for. Unbelievable. He buys his car and they say, we want it back. Well, it's their problem. They weren't supposed to sell that car to him, but they did. So it's his car. So what? Too bad, right? You sold it to him. The VIN number's there. A deal is a deal. It's signed. The VIN number was on there. Thank goodness that Ford Motor Company had enough sense to say, okay, you can keep the car you bought from our dealership. This is how screwed up these places are. That's why I stay away from them as much as I can and buy my cars from private individuals. Tesla better watch out because the Chinese company BYD has a car that people are saying are more luxurious and faster than the Teslas to compete with Tesla. It's called the BYD Seal. And the thing about it is, people think, oh, Chinese, they can make cheap electric cars. They can also make fancy ones, too. The market in China is insane. This year, 45% of their sales were electric plug-in vehicles, whether it was plug-in hybrids or full electric cars. That was 45% of their sales. In the United States, for example, this year so far, 9.1% are plug-in electric vehicles. Now, most of those are plug-in hybrids, not fully electric cars, but that shows you 40% of them in China are the plug-in electric cars. Only 9% in the United States. The Chinese market is much bigger than the American market is. And they don't sell these seals in the United States yet. They may never, but they're selling them in Europe. If they start buying this Chinese stuff, as this reviewer said, the Seal matched the Model 3 in pretty much every category, and its all-wheel drive version is not only cheaper, but slightly quicker than the Tesla. Maybe China should just stick to selling them to themselves, not worry about the United States. Hey, we don't want those electric cars. The Chinese are buying them. Well, guess what? Americans aren't. Maybe they won't bring them to the United States because nobody wants to buy them. They don't want to buy any kind of electric cars. Why would they want to buy Chinese? Only thing there is price. Now, this thing is included in that because it's an expensive car. It's pretty much the same price as a Model 3 Tesla. This isn't a $10,000 electric car that they're making. This is a more expensive one. So it looks like the Chinese can do the whole gamut from the cheap ones to the expensive ones. They're more in electric cars. You can see that. Well, California's in it again. California is the first state to get federal funding for hydrogen energy hubs. The government getting involved in crap they don't understand. They're going to give hundreds of millions and eventually billions of dollars to make these hydrogen hubs, to make hydrogen and, distribute hydrogen for vehicles. Well, I just read an article the other day where a scientist said, forget hydrogen. It's not going to make it. It's too much hassle to get the H out of the water. It takes too much energy. It's got to be under tremendous pressure to go any distance. And this guy said, forget hydrogen as a fuel. It's not going to make it, right? So here's the government giving a ton of money to California to create a hydrogen infrastructure. Look at the Toyota Mirage. Great car, runs fine, massive failure. There's no fuel supply for it, right? Even Shell Oil shut down their hydrogen stations they had in California. So now the government's giving money to create this stuff. That's just the government. They don't know what they're doing. They're just a bunch of idiots throwing our taxpayer money, and in this case, throwing it at California to make stupid hydrogen available. The cars aren't out there yet, right? And it looks pretty much like they're failures anyways. We're a long way if we ever do have fuel cell cars. They're complex, cost a lot of money to make. Who knows if there's enough materials to make them around, right? Bad enough electric cars. We do have electricity all over the place. You could certainly make that better than you could make a hydrogen system. But here's the government again, wasting our taxpayer dollars, building things that'll probably be complete failures. The federal administration selected 7 regional hubs for a $7 billion program to kickstart development of hydrogen fuel. They just throw money at things, right? And then when it doesn't work, oh, there's $7 billion down the toilet, right? Nobody knows if this stuff's going to work. The machines that run on them don't really exist. Toyota's got the Mirai, very low production thing. I guess they only sell in California. James May said that, hey, it was the best car he ever had that he had to get rid of because he had one in England, and there was like one hydrogen station in the whole country. This government loves wasting our money, in this case sending it to California, to make something that may never come to fruition, and yet there go our taxpayer dollars, as usual, just wasted. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.